Testing. We're back. Have I got food in my teeth?
We've got food in my teeth.
No.
No, you got a little bit there. Just there. Yeah, that's good. Your teeth are lovely.
Just had some lunch. It's all good. We can hear. We are live. We've got our new mics. How cool are these mics?
Yeah, they're pretty good. I feel like we're proper now. I feel like we're the real deal. The real podcasters around here now.
Yeah, well, it's taken a while for us to get there. We've gone through a hell of a journey. Literally, it's been a mad journey. So obviously, welcome back to our channel and our new podcast series. Obviously, we've got our current YouTube channel where we're posting
Big
weekly
shout out to our
vlogs.
subscribers.
Yeah, thank you,
And the
guys.
people that tune in regularly. And we might not have like hundreds and thousands of views, but we have like regular people that tune in every week. So we appreciate
you a lot. And yeah, you're seeing our journey. And that's more just our lifestyle, what we get up to, our week-to-week basis. We upload every week on a Sunday. So, but yeah, we wanted to incorporate something more, something a bit deeper for the followers that are also going through their journey and their self-transformation journey. And, you know, you may be entering a new relationship, you might be in a current relationship. And this is why we felt guided, haven't we, to talk about sex, love, and relationships.
I mean, pretty interesting topic.
Yeah.
I think when everybody is sex, everybody's ears perk up like sex. Like
But
everybody
no one talks about sex.
Nobody talks about it.
I tried to talk about sex with my mum yesterday and she went so embarrassed. I was like, this should be something that we all talk about openly. I mean, I guess not everyone's as open as me and you are.
Do you know why it's not spoken about openly?
Why?
It's because sex, until like we've really awakened in ourselves, is kind of like a paradox. It's kind of like, you know, we all have our own sexual imaginations, our own sexual fantasies, and that's happening on a very personal level. And it's that kind of personal sexual excitement and everything that we don't actually open and express to each other, because there's kind of like, there's a sadness in it because it's so self-contained, but then there's also like a deep shame behind it, because it's actually shame that drives the imagination and shame that drives the sexual lusting and the sexual wanting. But, you know, that's something we're going to talk about in this video today, and how that actually happens. It's easy to talk about, like for me to say it like that, but people are like, what? Behind my own sexual imagination, lust and shame. Like that don't make sense. And I think like...
there's so much to talk about on
There
it.
is so much to talk about. But we'll start off with the very fundamentals, because before you really have sex, which is that intercourse with another, you've got to be in a relationship. So I think we should start at relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we even get into sex.
Okay.
And what kind of relationship you're having. And I think that's like a really good question to like ask yourself.
Or
like,
what kind of relationships are you attracting?
Or attracting, yeah. Having, attracting.
Attracting, yeah. And I mean, I definitely would like to go back a little bit to pre-healthy relationship.
Wind it back to the dark times.
Wind it back a bit to the dark times. Wind it back a bit to the times where what I was attracting was awful, terrible.
Yeah, but you was awful and terrible, so that's why you was attracting.
This is what I was saying, yeah. So there's definitely a level of realization, a level of awareness came to me just before I met David, actually, of I was sick and tired of attracting the same man, like the same, it was the same, different face, same energy. And that energy, when I was really like becoming aware of it, and then realizing also it, like you said, it was you attract what you are. I realized that I was carrying a lot of sexual energy, and very unhealthy sexual energy. So having that awareness that I was carrying a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and a lot of fear behind my emotions, behind my sexual drive, should I say. And that was initially making me attract men who were also doing the same. So I had a lot of lack of commitment. I had a lot of just wanting sex and nothing else. A lot of sexual luring and manipulation. That was heavy in the years before, you know, when I was single before meeting you. And I found that energy I was attracting, I was like, why am I attracting all the bad ones? Why am I attracting all the ones that aren't honest? Why am I attracting the ones that don't want any loyalty? Why am I attracting the ones that just want to mess me around? There was a lot of energy within me that I had to go through and process and become aware of. And I'm sure you know.
Well, of course, I know the ins and outs of it all.
But yeah, I had to have a word with myself for sure. And I knew I needed help. I knew I needed healing. And the initial part of this energy that I was carrying, I had to just say, no more. Like, no more. I can't do this anymore. I can't attract this anymore. And this is where I went into my pure, like, deep self-healing. And that was the moment I stopped externalizing and internalizing. And then my whole life literally changed within, like, it was like a month or two. Yeah, like a couple of months, and then on to meeting David. He completely transformed me. And I keep pointing down here because it's your womb. It's my womb held a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of sexual excitement, a lot of sexual projection, a lot of sexual manipulation. Just there was a hell of a lot going down. It was literally like I was carrying hell in my womb.
You didn't realise it at the time because you was unconscious to how painful.
I knew I was experiencing it. I knew there was a part of me that was luring it and like that was wanting it. Yet there was another part of me that was like, I don't want this. What the fuck am I doing? There was such a battle going on inside of me until meeting David.
I'll take all credit for that.
So
it's definitely.
And it's just before we go on to meeting David, I just need to say I found David on Instagram, and the video he was recording at the time live, you were doing a live with your friend.
Shout out to Tom.
The title was Conscious Sex. So there's my ears gone up, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, what is this? I'd never heard of conscious sex before. I'd never I was never really aware of it, but it sounded to me like when you were talking about it, you were talking about reaching a woman, loving a woman, and you were talking about loving away her sexual pain and suffering, wasn't it? You were talking about that. Do you remember what you were talking about?
Yeah, I was talking about sex without love, which is emotion.
Yeah.
And the difference between sex without love, which is emotion, versus sex with love, which is consciousness. So they're two completely different states.
Blew my mind. Anyways. And whatever David did, like he knew he didn't, like he had that, like, I want to love a woman. I want to find someone who I love, right? That was you knew, like.
I wanted somebody to have what I knew to be true in myself, which was a, I don't want to call it a divine union because it should be a normal relationship. But in this world, it is a divine union when most human beings are asleep to that divine nature, to the consciousness that they are. So I wanted that deeper relationship where the fundamental of that relationship was self-realization, the realization of God, and then to have God in a relationship. So that's what I initially
you were looking
wanted.
for someone who was aware, conscious, and had a relationship with God. And I did. I definitely had a relationship with God. I definitely had a relationship with, like, myself, of wanting something better for myself. And I wanted a man to reach me because I was tired of just not being reached. I was tired of just being just used and abused and just taken for granted. So yeah, like what you were talking about, literally, like it completely blew my mind, and it made me like realize that there are men out there.
There are men out there. I don't see myself as the only man out there. I know there's many of men out there that are actually doing the work on themselves to transform emotion into love, and I just know that I'm here to be a part of the teaching of. Yeah,
because you knew the power of loving a woman. You knew the power of how a man feels loving a woman. You know that that's what the majority of men miss out on in their life because they're so self-obsessed, they're so self-absorbed in their own lives, in their own business and their own pleasures, that they neglect love. They neglect a part of themselves, which is love, and they also neglect their love. And it just leaves a woman feeling so unloved in discontentment, which makes her then independent and self-obsessed. And, you know, you end up with two people that are just living separate lives. And I knew I didn't want that, and you knew you didn't want that either.
Well, I didn't know. I knew that I didn't want that, but I knew that the whole purpose of life and the whole purpose of relationships is to find union with each other. It's really quite straight. It's like the more you awaken, the more you realize how straightforward and how simple life is. Like everything in life has an opposite, just like a male has an opposite. And the reason why everything has an opposite is because union is formed through two polarities. So in everything that you find, if you come together in a union, you will move beyond the physical dimensions. And that happened with myself as I awakened to God through my own realization. I was aware of the feminine, which is the love energy that God universe is. It is pure love, pure unifying energy. So when I realized that in myself, I was having a union with God. But then, where is the love in existence? Like love out of existence is your realization of God. But where is love? I'm in existence. There's no point me just being focused on being out of existence. Like I'm in existence. So where is the next best thing in existence that is my equal opposite? And that's female. So I knew of the divine union. I knew that through right lovemaking, through realization of each other, that a union will happen.
Yeah.
And so, that's been the drive of my life to first live it. I knew it, but I have to live it. I have to experience it and live it before I can teach it. Otherwise, I'm just teaching something that I haven't lived. And that holds no power. Like, I have the knowledge of it, but now I have the experience.
So this is where the intention came when I met David. It was like from day one, maybe not like day one. I think day one. Well, I don't know. It probably was day one.
It was day one.
It was completely day
one.
one. Day one, we did.
We
made love.
I was like, no, we didn't make love on day one.
Yeah, we
did.
did.
Made emotion.
But this is the thing.
We made straight up emotion because I was still going through a lot.
Okay, but whatever happened in that first week, which was the week that I felt like you reached me. Whatever happened, it doesn't matter whether it was whatever happened that week when we first met. That whether or not it was our intention, whether or not it was that was like pure you loving me or your intentions, what you were doing to me was whatever happened was you cleared something in me. Like I never forget that night. I don't know what night it was. Whether it was 1, 2, 3, or 4. Maybe 5.
I recently just wrote it in my book. So yeah, it was day 4. Yeah.
Day 4, where like we made love. He reached me like no one's ever reached me. Like his intentions to make love to me were so there. It was very overwhelming. It was very like, God, this is so different to what I've ever experienced before. Like so different. And I never forget, just after laying with you in your arms, like whatever it was like I was in some kind of meditation. I'm just lying there, just pure bliss. We just in pure God state in your arms. And I never forget that I felt like I was falling and I was doing some mad traveling stuff. Whatever it was, my consciousness was falling, and it was falling into my womb area. And I said, and I woke up, didn't I? Because I kind of was like in and out of consciousness, but then, obviously you're awake, but in that meditative state, I dipped, and then I was like, whoa, there's something in me. And I said, there's something in me. And you were like, what's the matter? I was like, I feel like I've just fell into hell. And you were like, oh my God, how do you feel? And I was like, I need to go there. I need to release this from me. And we were talking about, in the first few days of us meeting, about how man has projected man's sexuality into woman. And in my womb, your womb as a woman absorbs energy. Like you're constantly always absorbing energy. So when you are having sex with random people and you're having sex, going out and just thinking, oh, it's fine, just getting my satisfaction for the night. Honey. you don't even realize what you are absorbing. And you think it's just a one night thing, or you think, you're just seeing someone for a little bit and it won't affect you. Oh my God, you will be carrying that energy and that absorption of that energy in your womb for as long as you even know it. If you're so unaware, you will not realize how much you're holding on to. And I had this accumulation of my previous partners who I've been with in my womb. And when I said to you, I was like, I felt like I've just gone to hell. And then I said, I'm not scared because I know I need to go there. And then I dipped again and I was like, I'm ready to face what I've been holding on to. And I fell, and it felt like my whole consciousness fell, and it was like red and fire, and I could feel the devil, and it was like I was just watching it. I was just present with it. I was in it. I was in the hell that I had, and I was like, you no longer deserve to be here. You no longer are wanted in here. I see you. I see what you've been doing in me. I see what you have, how you've been driving all of my unconscious behavior. I see you now. Like I was so adamant how much I was seeing this part of myself that had been put there by man's sexuality, and I was like, I'm done with it now. And I literally said that in that time. I was like, I'm done. And then I remember in that moment, it was like a whirlwind of like this, and it spun me around, my consciousness around, and then it went up through me, and then just lifted out of my crown chakra, and it just went whoom. And then at the time it went up, I went whoom, and then I wake up, I was lying on you, and I was like, and I suddenly breathed, and I was like, oh my God. And you were like, are you okay? I could feel my heart was going like racing, wasn't it? I think you were feeling my heart. And I was like, it's gone. Like, it's gone. It's gone. And I knew it had gone. Like, I was like, it's gone. I don't have that in me anymore. And oh my God, from that day onwards, I mean, you even said, because you'd only known me, previously 4 or 5 days. But obviously I'd told you things about my past and situations I've been in and stuff like this. And like, yeah, just was always doing, like, being led, doing bad things and doing, like, very unconsciously and not realising, like, what I was doing. But then that moment, I was like, it's gone. And you were like, I know. You knew. Did you feel anything?
No, I think for me, I was just kind of creating like a safe container.
I felt so safe.
As like a safety for you to.
Yeah, I didn't feel scared to go into it. I didn't feel scared to go into it. And when it left me, I felt like a whole weight had been lifted. And energetically, how different was I? My energy shifted. Like, in that moment, I took out my hair extensions. I took off my nails. I took off everything that was just like a portraying, like a luring in energy, or like anything that was hiding my own insecurities. Like, I don't want to hide anymore. I've got nothing to hide anymore. There was a lot of shedding after that moment. And I believe that happened because David had projected his love into me. And this is what happens. This is what we've been learning through sex, through lovemaking, how much a man can heal a woman with his penis inserting the vagina. Like, there's so much healing that in it. And whatever you've done...
But before there's even a penis entering the vagina, the basics have to be understood.
The intentions.
The intentions.
The intentions behind it.
But not just the intentions, but also the whole emotional aspect behind it. Because you know, you were saying a minute ago about how you was carrying man's energy, but it's about understanding what was beneath that energy that man is projecting into woman. And I feel like that's what I've had to go through in my own experience. Like, until my awakening, I was very much that person. A lot of sexual projection, a lot of lusting, a lot of fantasizing, and I was kind of like keeping my sexual...
Can I ask a question? Were you the one projecting? Can women project?
Yes.
They can?
They can, yeah.
And
women can sexualise.
Okay, so they can also project and sexualise.
Of course.
And can men also in sex absorb?
Can men... No.
That's what I'm saying.
No.
That's interesting.
Can a man absorb from a female?
It can't, can it? Because I feel like that's in an actual... Like, you're external, we're internal.
All sexual energy comes from man.
Yeah.
All emotional sex. Women bring sexual energy down into their womb space. So when a conscious man and a conscious woman are having sex, what's happening, instead of like an emotional self-loving containment, there's actually like the penis and the vagina in the vagina is stimulating love between you. So instead of making emotion, you're like making love. And through that, you're both being fulfilled. Through that, you're both being nourished.
Yeah.
But whereas beforehand, before you've actually awakened, what we have emotion. So an emotion, like men's sexual stimulation, thoughts and sexual excitement and the lusting and everything, that is a self-contained euphoria. Like, men get off on it, men stimulate. So they have this like emotional content in themselves, this sexual emotional content. But what they're not aware of is underpinning that sexual emotional content is deep wounding. So like feelings of not being enough, feelings of rejection, feelings of shame. This is what's beneath men's unhealthy sexuality. So what you find is when men are coming from this wounded space, they're trying to unconsciously or subconsciously, they're trying to heal them wounds by overcoming a woman. Right, so this is why men chase women. This is why men try to dominate. This is why men are aggressive. This is why men are restless. It's because they have this wounding that's driving them to find healing. And instead of coming into the wounding and finding healing in themselves, going through that wounding in themselves, they try to overcome the wounding. And how do they do that? They do it through sex. And so they become so sexually cranked up.
We've learnt this.
And so sexually stimulated. They need somewhere for that energy to go. And unfortunately, it goes on to women. So when women are promiscuous and just sleeping around and they're sleeping with unconscious men, that ejaculation, when men are ejaculating or when men are sexually projecting, they're projecting their wounding into the female. So now the woman becomes contaminated in the womb space. This is what's happening with women when they really begin to realize, like you said, you awaken to the monster that was inside of you, which is men's unhappiness. So we then project that energy into the womb space where it begins to build up like a patina in the womb space of like emotional tension. Now woman has this emotional tension down in the vagina, in the womb space, that's restless, that needs some excitement, that needs to get something, that wants something for itself. Where does that energy come from? It's coming from man. So this is what makes women deeply unhappy. All women know beneath sex, like sex is sex. Women know that sex with a man, they're not really truly being loved and truly being nourished because the man is using the woman for the release of his own unhealed wounds.
His own unhappiness, yeah.
And then you have women that are just carrying this wounded man in them, which then creates them to take on this very masculine
and then
energy.
Is this when they can project it back onto man?
This is when, but it's the man in the woman that's projecting back at the man. Yeah. It's the man in the woman.
Which then, in turn, intimidates other men. Because I become intimidating to other men. Because I was carrying this masculine, wounded energy that's been, I've absorbed. I'm then projecting it back at them, which then in turn can cause a lot of intimidation.
Well, what it does is it gives that reflection of the unhealed wounds in themselves and can make them feel and can strike on that wounding in a man.
Because I've definitely I've had that thing. Well, you've met your match. I've said that to a lot of men in my past.
But do you know what that really is?
Yeah.
That is man's punishment for not loving a woman. So what man's really...
And I definitely did. Consciously or unconsciously, I punished a lot of men. Because I had so much...
unconsciously, because it was that sexual part of yourself that was driving your life. It was driving your behaviour. It was the man in you that was getting back at men.
I know, but then the actual person that I am, I'm not like that. But there was a part of me that really was like that. And that is the difference of like seeing yourself. Like I suddenly, because you just think, well, this is who I am. But my consciousness like parted and that awareness came where I realized, whoa, I have one part of me that knows I would never want to hurt anyone and never want to do that to anyone or never want to be mean to anyone and I just want to be loved and I want to love. Yet there's another part of me that was like a fuck you, like, yeah, I had that. It was like a rage. And I had a rage. I had an anger. I had a frustration.
What you had was a possession.
It was literally, I was just about to say that. It was a possession.
It's a possession.
Yeah.
And it's a possession.
It's a sexual possession.
It's a sexual possession. And this is
of
what
unhealthy sexuality, which, not everyone experiences. It depends, like, in your past.
It depends how much you've been projected onto.
Yeah. It's your generation.
The more prettier you are, the more sexual energy you're going to absorb.
Yep, and then yes, definitely. The more attractive you are, the more pretty you are, the more pure you are. That's what's scary.
I don't mean to speak badly, but I have to be accountable for like putting this out there.
This is our own experience.
But I have to be accountable. I was that person. So when I talk about men, I'm actually talking about who I was. Mm-hmm. But it is like men.
It's not going to relate to every man.
Men love innocence.
But men
men want to project onto that innocence. They want to degrade the innocence because that's what sex does. It degrades us.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like as a woman growing up, or a 13, 14, 15-year-old, I, even younger probably like 12 to 15, like, and onwards, I got so sexually projected on at school. A lot of comments, a lot of people, commenting and just projecting. Like 100% I was projected on. And and at school you've got a lot of pressure on, like, have you kissed anyone? Are you a virgin? Are you, have you had sex? Like, there's all this like pressure to be a certain way. And I remember like being called frigid in year 9, and I never forget it, like, because I hadn't kissed anyone and I hadn't been touched, and I was so vulnerable and actually really quite scared to kind of be with anyone. I'd have like boyfriends and just like hang out with them, but nothing really would happen. And then I never forget, in year 9, I had my first kiss, and from then on, where I'd been bullied and they called me frigid, I told girls in my school that I'd actually had sex when I hadn't, and then the next day I get called a slut. So, and it was just like, oh my God. So there was so much pressure from society as well, as a girl, and as I was pure and I was loving and I was fun and I was free. And then the moment that pressure came onto me, like I had to do something, I then had really bad experiences of like situations where you want to, because you want to fit in and you want to be cool and you want to be liked by a guy, and when guys are like, oh come on, like, do this with me, do that with me, and the men are putting pressure on you, like, you feel like to get their attention, to get their love, you have to. And I just never forget that first moment I let a man like touch me, and it was the worst experience of my life because I wasn't ready. He didn't love me. But yet that part of me wanted like attention and thinks, I should, super naive. And I just got pulled through that. And then once I did that, the guilt in myself for letting, not standing up for myself and not saying no. And I felt like a self-punish from that moment. And then one moment after another, I just kept getting into worse situations to the point where I ended up, my first love, it wasn't even love. It was so toxic, like, and it was a pure punishment. It was a proper toxic relationship where I was ready and I was like, okay, I do want to be with you. And he was 3 years older than me. And then I lost my virginity at 15. Nearly 16, and I never forget from that moment like how my life just spiraled. Like I was a girl before. I was a girl. I wouldn't say I was a woman. I was definitely a girl, naive, full of love, wanted to be loved, and then boom, things just happened, and then it just spiraled, and I had really bad situations happen to me, and then from that moment it was just a roll off into hell.
I know, because I've seen you cry and I've seen you go relive and re-experience what you denied yourself from feeling.
Yeah, and I definitely did deny myself from feeling it because I was so.
You didn't want to.
I didn't want to acknowledge that.
You didn't
want to
acknowledge how horrific that was as a situation. And unfortunately, this is the world we live in. That girls, when they grow up, as I've awakened more and more, I've seen how gentle, how sweet, how beautiful you are, and how you need to be nurtured, how you need to be loved, how you need to be made to feel safe. And this is one thing men are not doing on this planet. Men are not making their women feel safe. Men are not only not making their women feel safe, but they're not making their children feel safe. They're not making the people around them feel safe, and they're certainly not making a safe world for people to come into. And when a woman who is love in her essence, she is like here to remind men of what man's forgotten himself. When she meets man's sexuality, it scares the life out of her. Absolutely scares the life out of her. Yeah. And the only way like women can adapt to that. Don't get me wrong, there's loving men out there. There is loving men out there, but sex without love leads to trauma because it creates more trauma. And so, women, no matter who they are, when they come into sex for the first time, it automatically begins to traumatize them. And so what do women have to do? They have to become more harder. They have to become more numb to actually what's going on. And then if you look at if you look at what men have done to women, is we've made women performers, we've made women actors, we've made women cater
to their needs,
to what men need, right? Because I'm not being funny. You don't have sex shops full of men that are relieving women of their emotional tension. You have sex shops that are full of women relieving men's emotional attention. We have all of the sex shops, the porn magazines. It's not women buying porn magazines. Yes, women buy porn magazines. It's not women consuming sexual content.
But
yes,
then,
women consume sexual content.
But then it's the
man that's driving the whole sex industry.
But then there's a level of women end up having to self-please, women end up having to self-satisfy because they're not getting satisfied by their man. So then women are buying toys for themselves, and women are getting they have to have extra stimulants to feel anything, because they're so numb down there. They're so unloved down there. Yeah. So then they need that. They need that extra stimulants to feel anything. When I met David, I was numb. My womb was numb. I could never ever have sex and have an orgasm without playing with my clitoris or a vibrating toy or something. They were the only time I could ever orgasm. Then since meeting David, he's reached me in ways where my sensitivity has my vagina is like denumbed. Like when that energetic possession left me, I could suddenly feel again. So this has been our journey. Like this, what we're talking about has been what our experience has been, and how we've developed as a couple and in ourselves through each other and through sex.
I think sex is just before, actually quite a bit before I actually got with you, I started to notice after my awakening that my propulsion to want to masturbate was becoming less and less. My wanting to actually consume pornographic material was less and less. I was already going through this detachment where I wasn't actually being sexually stimulated. I didn't have this sexual wanting, this sexual lusting. It was beginning to dissolve. And then just before I got with you, when that emotion, but when the whole sexual excitement and the stimulation begins to dissolve, then all of a sudden you then move into this layer of okay, now I'm starting to panic around intimacy. I'm starting to get nervous around being open, because this is now you're coming into the wounding. Now you're coming into the wounded boy in you that didn't know how to be around mum, that didn't know how to be around dad because he copped a backhand or because mum and dad subconsciously pushed him away. So all of this childhood trauma then was underneath my sexuality. So then now I'm coming to you, and it's almost like you're manifesting into my mum. It's almost like now all of a sudden I'm feeling all this pressure. I'm feeling all this pressure to please, that I'm not good enough, I can't reach you, I can't pleasure you, and all this trauma's coming to the surface in me. So when Lauren's talking about love with emotion, I haven't for a long time now had sex with you because I'm sexually excited to have sex with you. So it's now I'm in that intimate space with you where all I can do is love you. But the more you create an intimate space with somebody, the more that love penetrates into your shadow. So it brings up all of this suppressed, undealt with, unacknowledged stuff. And every time we started to have sex at the very start, I'd start breaking out in sweat, and I'm sweating, and all this stuff would just be coming up, and I'd be feeling sometimes I say to you
you felt depressed.
I'd ejaculate, and then all of a sudden I'd just be hit with this heavy depression, because all of this energy was coming up, and I was I feel fucking depressed right now. I feel horrible about myself. I feel pathetic. I feel
worthless.
And
this happened we had a horrific
for the first
sex
year of
life,
our relationship. It was horrific.
It was horrific.
It's horrific.
There was moments, don't get me wrong, that were oh my God, wow, okay, what was that? And that would always be after we've gone through something. After we'd gone through something, we'd then be whoosh, something would just be amazing. And then what would happen? That love making would then bring up even more stuff. So it was every time
we would start arguing in the middle of having sex.
Oh no.
That's how, because there wasn't
so
and this is the thing, when you're so sexually excited and you're so emotionally driven, that emotion is it's like a high. It's like you're vibrating. Yes, let's get it. That's what sexually. So when you're both in sexual excitement, That's why
It's
there's no
so
real.
selfish.
There's no
connection.
union. There's
There's
no
no
real
union.
acknowledgement. There's no real, and there's also a lack of feeling and sensitivity in the genitals. We think we're emotionally stimulated.
Yeah.
Like, we think there's so much stimulation, but what's being stimulated down
Is
there is
your
the
emotion.
emotion. The
Not-
emotion's being stimulated. So
So it needs to be harder. It needs to be faster. It needs to be more vigorous.
it needs to be, and it becomes violent. That's when
yeah.
violence crosses over into sex, because emotion is pain, is wounding. And so this is why sex and violence go hand in hand. This is why we have so much sex and violence on the planet, because it's coming from wounding. Whereas when we understand that, we don't have the emotional stimulation. Now, when you don't have the excitement, when you don't have that emotional stimulation, what do you have? You have presence, you have vulnerability, you have openness, you have intimacy. And that's when you're really beginning to be like that with each other, that's when your wounding's going to come to the surface. That's when your shit's going to come up. But as you move through the wounding and you're more grounded, you're more present, you begin to have like this authentic love and connection where it's like, I'm not here to please myself. Like, I'm here to love you.
The
To
two of
generate
you.
love between you.
Yeah, because there's actually so much behind making love, like so much healing behind sex, where when it's pure, like what you were saying, like connection, union, I'm like our love entwined, like you completely loving and just expressing your love to me, and then me completely loving, expressing your love to me. And aside all of our own sexual needs, desires, and emotion being like so unpresent, you are going to be more present with each other. And in that, like David, when he's made love to me, like he reaches me, and it's like, what is he reaching? And I always feel like when we've had that pure lovemaking and David's reached like so deep into my womb, he accesses a part of like my love and takes it as a part of himself. And it's such a pleasure to be able to openly give that love back to David. And I always find like after he's reached me, he's reaching a part of himself through me, which is, you know, it's my love, which I'm an embodiment of love. And David I'm the representation of his love. So for David to actually reach me should be any man's like pure goal and intention, because when you actually reach your woman, the feeling you will get after will be pure God, pure bliss, pure contentment, pure happiness. Like, it's not even happiness, it's just contentment. It's like fulfillment. And you will lie there, and I always know, because when he's truly reached me, he is so happy and content for a few days. Like your energy levels raise, his vibration raises, you look healthier, you are healthier. And I always find that it recharges not just David, but it recharges me. So as a couple, as a man and woman couple, you actually have the physiological
response.
Yeah, right, response. You actually get so much recharge from it.
It's like you're charging the batteries.
Charging the
Do you know what? It's funny, because back in the day when I was a bodybuilder, I would always say, oh no, we can't have sex now because I need to keep that tension in me. I need to keep that oomph in me for when I go to the gym. Now I can make love to you, and I go to the gym like sometimes after ejaculation, and I'm like, I'm on fire. I'm absolutely on fire in the gym because I feel so vitalized and I feel so like recharged. And
loved.
And this is one thing I've noticed more and more as I've become more conscious of my penis and more conscious of your womb space, is your womb, like when loving, it's like a generator. It's like there's like a generator there, and then I'm sticking my penis inside that generator and taking a charge out of it. And not only am I taking a charge, I'm like pulling that love out of you and pulling that love into me, but I'm also, you know, recharging you and pulling out the world, the tension of the world. Like you're problems,
Yeah.
like any stress,
Any feelings of lack of love, any feelings of frustration, yeah, agitation, like all of that, you know, you hold in your womb space. This is your, you know, your sacral chakra holds all of these emotions. Like your feelings come from your womb space. You hold feelings in your womb space as a woman. And when a man intentionally enters his penis with love, he can literally suck out all of that tension and all of that dissatisfaction, all that disappointment out of your vagina, leaving you feeling so amazing, so content, so happy. And it's so funny because it's like our whole life we've been trying to find things to do, like gym, going for walks, going for, you know, getting busy at work, like anything to just distract us or to get us away from feeling those emotions, when all you actually need to do is to make pure love with your husband or wife or your partner or your whatever it is.
Something's just come to me as you were saying that. Then it's like,
and this is something we've
do you know
learned
why
recently.
we don't
like,
talk? Do you know why we don't talk about sex?
why?
Because nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. That's why. That's why people. That's why we can't be open to our children. This is why we can't talk properly in society about sex, because nobody has a fucking clue what they're up to.
Because it's all led by
selfish,
self-driven,
self-indulgence, sexual pleasure for oneself. So how can you have anything
and it's
to
so
offer
much shame behind
when you're
that.
there for yourself?
There's so much shame behind that.
Because it comes from shame.
It's self-satisfaction, you know, sexual excitement. It's greed.
It's everything you've
wanting,
denied feeding in yourself.
Yeah, and that is the reason why, you know, children don't want to talk about it. Parents don't want to talk about it with their children. Parents don't even want to talk about it in general. People don't want to talk about it in general because there is so much shame behind it. You know, I've had so many of the girls like come to me and be like, ask for advice, because it's like, you know, what do I do in this situation? Like, he always asks me to do this, to do that, to do this. And I'm like, he is not loving you. He doesn't love you enough. Like, you've got to tell him, stop telling me what to do to please your sexual excitement and your sexual wanting and lusting. I just want you to love me. And if a man's not capable of loving you as a woman, you need to stand up for yourself. But obviously, how do we know? I didn't know this information back in the day. I didn't know this information.
Is he there for you? Is he the guy that doesn't give a shit and like ejaculates and doesn't care about how you feel?
But I kind of didn't know that men like you even existed. That was the thing. I didn't even know. No one speaks about it. I never really heard. Like, you had your teacher Barry Long, who talks about it a lot, but I never had that. Like, I knew there was something missing and I just didn't know what it was. I just didn't think that no man would ever be able to fulfill me.
You did know what it was, but you just didn't accept it.
What do you mean?
You knew what the problem was. But nobody loved you.
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
But what was you trying to do? You was trying to find love.
Yeah, I was trying to overcome the fact that I just wasn't loved. But I feel like that's where I accepted that I wasn't loved. That the tears I cried the year I met you, like, I was grieving so much of my unhappiness. I actually had to face the fact that how unloved I was in every relationship I've been in. Like, you know, for one, feeling the level of how unloved I've been, and then two, feeling the guilt of how much I've been unloving as well. So it was like a double pain I had to go and process. But I'm so glad I faced that pain, because I don't think a lot of women, you know, even want to be accountable, that, you know, that you want to blame and you want to blame the man. Yes, there's blame in that, but there's also accountability and responsibility of yourself of, okay, what have you allowed yourself to do? Because I had allowed myself to be with these men. No one, okay, a couple of times I was forced. Unfortunately, I had that experience, but a lot of the time I wasn't forced, and I actually was like, yeah, fuck it, like the fuck it moment. And that's the guilt that I was just trying to deny in my past, that I had to face in my healing. And, you know, David loving my womb and loving me brought up the pain of how unloved I had been in my past. So, you know, when you get into conscious relationships, when you get into a relationship where you're on board of healing each other, oh my God, the wounds are just like, they are crazy.
The wounds run throughout humanity. They're not just going like, you know, they're not just the wounds. I've said this before. They're not just wounds in my body. These are wounds that, you know, my body is a product of evolution. My body is a product of
generation,
pain. DNA. It's all there. Through my own healing, I've had to lay there, and I've had to go through war. I've had to go through massacres. I've had to go through everything. Like, because we often think that dream states are interdimensional, and there is a little bit of a truth to that. But 95% of the dreams that we're having is when we're slipping into the subconscious, into the emotion that we haven't cleared. And so at night we're often going to bed and we haven't actually sunk into pure unconscious, pure sleep. We actually sink into the subconscious where we're playing around with all of the emotions. And that emotion that I feel in me, which used to erupt as anger and all of that, that is an accumulation of human emotion. And in that emotion in myself was all of the pain of humanity's history. And as we go through the awakening, we have to process all of it. That's why, like as you were saying, the wounds run so deep.
Yeah. I can see it now. Now I've seen it myself. I can see it run through my family generations. And like, I know that if it doesn't change in me now, it's going to go to our future children. And I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. And I want to be responsible as much as I can to clear this karma and to clear these wounds within me so I can free myself to be able to, one, have an amazing relationship with my husband, but to have an amazing relationship with my children and show that it's safe to love, like it's safe to open up, it's safe to be vulnerable. And they're lessons of knowing your boundaries. I have so many boundaries now. I have so much more boundaries now than I've ever had in my entire life. And unfortunately, you've had the brunt of that because I don't let
boundaries have been good for me because
the boundaries have been
me awaken more
accountable
deeply to what I'm subconsciously or unconsciously doing.
Like what you may have got away with in your previous relationship, he can't get away with.
Because I remember when I first got with you, there was still a lot of undermining, like subtle like I'd undermine you a lot, destabilise you a lot, and the reason why I would do that is because we unconsciously we do this, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to make ourselves feel safe, and the way that we make ourselves feel safe in a relationship, if we undermine the other person, then we kind of make that, and we can make that other person feel unstable in themselves. Well, where do they find their stability? They find it in you. And so by undermining and destabilizing somebody, you're then bonding them to you because you're like, oh, I actually really need this person because without this person, I'm fucked. And these are like all of the unconscious behaviours that have been playing out.
We'll definitely go into that more in another video.
But what I am going to say is how you can tell that sexual excitement is so unhealthy, although it provides a great high when you're in it. How you can tell it's so unhealthy in a relationship is if you both stay in your own contained euphoria, your own contained imagination. Is your relationship, you will need to constantly, let's do this, let's do that, you will constantly need to make it more and more and more because you'll always need that stimulation. And so like me and you, we will never need to put the boots on, do you know what I mean? Like to whop out the bondage stuff, do you know what I mean? Let's get it gimped right up and stuff. Like we're never going to need to do that because the love between us is sufficient. We don't need the stimulation. And this is something that happens in all relationships. Because the love is not there, over time, the sex begins to dry up. And as the sex begins to dry up, you become more distant, you become more unhappy in a relationship. And what does your sexual stimulation do? It then puts it into pornography. It then puts it into another woman. Yeah. And before you know it, you're running around having an affair, trying to fulfill your own sexual desires and your own sexual wantings whilst destroying everything around you, because that's what sex does without love.
And and to before we finish, because we definitely want to talk about more in another episode, but like what David and I have learned recently, and especially in myself, about these both of our anger, frustration, agitationness, just like when we're feeling off and a little bit snappy Aggie, we the direct thing to do, like instead of like, I always I used to be like, I need to get away, whereas like now I'm like, no, I want to make love to you, like let's make love. And I feel like that has, with our intentions of just being close and recharging and really putting our attention and our consciousness together, has oh my god, it completely balances us. It's like, oh my god, and it's like, whoa, this shit works.
Do you know what's funny is that every man I know is like, I don't get enough sex. Well, if you actually give up wanting sex because you only want sex to make yourself feel better, if you actually address that, how you feel now, get rid of the wanting, your woman will be like, can we make love? Can we make love? Like, you come up to me all the time. We're like, should we make love now? And because there's no emotion, there's no like, there's less and less personal, like, no, I don't want to, I don't feel like it. Yeah. And because we're so open, I'm like, yeah, make love, let's go. Yeah. And we can just jump straight in bed and just start making love without any need of sexual excitement, without any needs of wanting.
Pure vulnerability.
Just pure vulnerability, pure love.
You've got to, as a woman, allow yourself to receive that love as well. But as a woman, you've got to speak up. You've got to tell your man, you're not loving me enough. I'm feeling these feelings because you're not loving me enough. And it's like having that communication. Like, you'll know if it's because you're not being loved enough.
What I took the most responsibility for is the love that even if there's wounding in Lauren and it is from the past, that past still comes from a lack of man, a lack of man's love. And whether that's this lifetime or a million lifetimes ago, I represent man. And I'm not here to make every man accountable. I'm here to make myself accountable as man. I am man, so I am accountable for all of your wounding, for every part of every piece of you that is wounded, I'm responsible for, because I never loved you enough. And that was my job, whether it was 10,000 years ago or whether it is today. And the
question is, as a woman, are you ready to receive that love? Do you deserve that love? That's questions that you have to ask yourself as a woman, because if you feel like you're in a place where you don't deserve that love, you will not be able to receive that love, and that man will not be able to give you that love. But the more I open up myself, forgive myself, take accountability of my things, the more I allow myself to be loved, which is in turn, I can then receive the amount of love that he gives me. Whereas before, I'd be like, oh, get away from it. I can't, it's too much. Like, because there was a part of me that didn't deserve it. There's a part of myself that hated myself. So these emotions, and we'll definitely talk about different things. I'd love your guys' comments on this.
Give us some comments and some feedback.
And some, ask us some questions on it, because obviously we talk about our experience, and we talk about, what we've been through as a couple and what we've been through in our past, but things that we've learned, and we want to share that with you in case you guys are going through the same thing where you've met your divine counterpart, you want to work on your relationship, you want things to get better, and you're both involved, you're both committed to that. These videos are for you, and obviously if those who are single just want to learn a little bit more of what work you've got to do individually before you meet your counterpart, if you know there's someone else out there, there's work you can do as well on yourself. But yeah, ours has been a mad journey. I'm sure there's going to be so much to talk about. We could
go on forever, but today we're going to call this one here.
I know.
Do you know
we look
what?
forward to doing more of these. So
one last thing that I will say, and I think it was Tony Robinson that said it, is heal the boy and the man will appear. And I think that's something that all men have to go through. That is the greatest journey of life.
Heal the boy and the man will appear.
And the man will
it's
appear. Yeah.
So true.
But anyway, let's call this one a day.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Obviously, you can,
much love.
Yeah. Definitely comment, like, subscribe, do what you need to do, and tune in for more content.
We'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.